meeting on Tuesday, September 12th. We'll seek your guidance, your wisdom, Lord, in every decision. Thank you for blessing this in so many ways.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
Ma'am, is there any changes to the agenda?
no, sir.
Now, so other speak now. Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearing. This is a public hearing, non-ad valorem assessment for fire services within the city. Resolution 2023-77, a resolution of the City of Clewiston adopting a non-ad valorem assessment, Rule 3632, stating the need for such a special assessment, particularly the proposed method of appropriating the fire rescue cost among parcels of property located within the fire rescue service area. Approving a fire date. And just to be clear, that is the properties within the city limits of the city of Clewiston. I declare the public hearing open. Is there any comments from the citizens or anyone?
Chief, please give an overview of the steps that have been taken up to this point, just to remind everybody regarding this.
We started back in November 2020. The city declared its intent to they're doing it that way. The city of Bell does it through an assessment. As you know, the East and West District for has an MSBU to collect it. So we thought it prudent to put it into an assessment. We talked about it for many years. So this in our district, because you know this Clewiston Fire Department is not just a city, it's also all of East District. So the county sat there at Ashton and put our assessment in place.
Just to correct, the county actually set an MSB.
Correct. It's the MSB. It was already their assessment off of what our needs and their needs were in the county, in the rural area. So this is a follow-up to that. So either way, we know the fire department is going to be funded. You have always been graciously and funded the fire department in just about everything we needed. But we do think that this is a fair way to budget. It's kind of like when I go to the bank, there's scissors that tells you exactly, and those numbers are in there, and down in two-prong has to be and the response instead of broken down into two separate fees. It's not that we're trying to hide anything. We're very transparent with that. But to be fair, everything is based off of an ERU, which is a residential equivalent. About 1,600 change is about average size home. Some are larger, some are smaller. But we take that unit, that ERU, and we use that to extrapolate for two ERUs. So residential unit would pay for that same commercial space. There's all make it fair, equitable for everyone, and it's a truth and through our this is based on the first 5 years of that plan. So we have it broken out for you. Here's what we think it's going to cost. Here's what we think your first 5 years. Now, this plan, that first 5 years of it, we really would relook at that if our plan is going along with what our capital needs are. Doing for the citizens and to guarantee, I guess another point I could make, when things are based on ad valorem, and when the market tanked in 2008-9, property values plummeted in those areas. I won't name them, but if you can just Google it and look at the lessons learned in the fire service, and that was, let's base off of assessment or MSBU the benefit for the property, so we don't have those big budget swings. We know what about us it's going to cost, what our costs are going to be, but being tied to ad valorem for other expenses, it's really not necessary. And if you look at the definition of assessment, your fire assessment is the first one listed in the state of Florida for a reason. That is the most common. Protect life and property. So that's probably the best sum up I have of it. And I'm happy to state for the citizens, it is lower in the city than the county assessment. And that's really because we're more dense. It's not that the spending any more in the county, it's just they're spread out more. They have to collect a little bit more. We're more dense. We can collect a little less, but we're doing the same service with the same trucks, the same.
Yeah. I'd like to just read a line out of the report that I clarify. It said this program of the way this assessment was come up with each. Now, this is just for residential unit. Will be $116 per unit. This consists of a readiness fee of $71.19 plus a demand fee of $44, and then you'll have a special assessment, fire services, City of Clewiston, then it'll say $77 or
That's why we're having I guess I should start also added there why we're having a meeting today. And we normally would have these in a regular workshop. We have to follow the statute. It has very strict to the meeting. And we use the trim notices to do that. Notices are geared towards county. different advertising requirement than municipalities. So with that, we could not have it at your budget milling hearing, which we wanted to originally have on the 7th. We had to and completed by 15. So you're kind of in the proper way, meaning they get their notice with the trim notice so they can compare it. Here's your notice, here's your trim notice, and the 18th was past that deadline. So that's why this meeting had to happen outside of those two regular meetings. Just make sure everybody was clear now why that had to happen that way. Like Clewiston Drainage District, if you look at those are things that we pay also that are not out of your ad valorem. That's run by a separate district, but it's on your tax bill inside of and look those up for the tax bill. I pay around $70, $60. So to give you an idea of what mow the grass. So not only I think it's a great deal, but I also our fellows the same district, our residents that are out there, their tax bill, they're each fire at a little more expensive. They're correct. Right. And of course, the most sounds about $10 a month. The average resident, different for commercials, different for industrial.
So all uses, whether it be will those portions of the operating budget, the types of cost of what are the actual cost and is based on who's using the
Opportunity to build that. I went back and two parts. Yeah. I'm I was they it's uh, I'm trying to get imposed. I'm for the same country, or is going to come from the city either way. Well, let's talk exactly. Nothing's changed other than where the money.
If you have a
is
house, half a million, you're going to pay less. If you have a house, 50 transparent.
to the avalanche side, if you have a house based on to save property and to provide assistance to you, we don't care for square footage. So we took every house, the large house and the small house, and the study, and we're going to base that on the ERU, the equivalent splitting the costs, and the cost is equally split.
That you receive, is it exclusively coming from the city of Clewiston?
Well, the department receives from the Clewiston Fire Department serves area statement. That's what you're. Most of that ends up coming to the for the department. The commissioners are how much things cost based on how much they tax, and the reality is there are a lot of cities they're being compared to that these fees, as I mentioned earlier, these don't come out of the the county. They do it through an assessment. Other cities may choose to do the same. Ask for anything in the city's budget right now, this assessment will cover. Person just take this.
Well, we just voted to fill that up. So.
But I have just to clarify, and as we talk about this, I have with City of LaBelle, Montura, and the other here in Delta.
Basically, the city of LaBelle. City of LaBelle. City of
the three are all funded by the county.
Correct, but
Okay.
the two here in Philadelphia are small. The rest of it's all equal. It's all through or MSBU. The money, you know, all collects their side, Clewiston collects side. It provides the protection.
hearing part of this closed and open the floor for remarks or questions.
Um, so, and I want to go back to Thursday night but because of the assessment, and I mentioned it was a MSBU because that's the way we always talked about fire. When we started this discussion many years ago, fire assessment, MSBU, whatever it may be called, that millage, citizens or the taxpayers of Clewiston will be paying 7 budget. There was a lot of positions that were asked for. There was a lot of things that were reduced from the budget, but nevertheless, the budget that over $400,000 in increased revenues from the state. It included adding over $200,000 more into contingency from when we first began the budget process to when we ended it. In addition to that, the cost of doing business has gone up, but I believe in this case the cost of business has gone up. We've not done our back, and that's why I asked for the rollback rate, which was only $150,000 difference. It wasn't meeting the full millage, 1 mil, which this assessment is 1 mil. That we originally had discussed we would be reducing the city millage rate by, which would be 5.5314 when we first started these discussions. And I'm laying all this out as a point of transparency because I covered what I am the assigned fund balance. I know, Randy, I mentioned 16%, you mentioned 25%. I still believe that it could be unassigned fund balance. This budget cycle could have been dropped by $500,000. So I believe that to the fire assessment. Travis, you mentioned other communities and trying to compare other communities. Their millage rates are anywhere from 3 to 4 mils. Okay, our millage rate is 6.53, just starting out. So it's already a huge increase for the citizens of Clewiston, and I believe that there's funding that we could still access to reduce some of the burden by reducing to the rollback rate, or even to do the one we do have is that issue is that we did not do our part as a city commission to make sure and to ensure that we had a budget that really and truly we have received record revenues into this budget, and that is not as sustainable for the future without us cutting back.
I'd like to add something. When you mentioned the 3 to 4 mils, looking at some of our surrounding communities, I pulled budgets for some of our surrounding communities, and yes, they are at 3 to 4 mils, but many of them have several additional assessments that we don't have there. So I don't know that that's a fair.
But if you add up
comparison.
all their assessments and their millage rate is still lower than what we're paying.
But and I reached out to some of their commissioners, and I believe that some of those communities are going to go up a possibility of $1.5 million.
Yeah, particularly the Bale, I was informed they're going to
this next
almost as high as our rate plus the assessments.
Plus assessments in addition to, the 1 and now 2 that we're looking at. The possibility
and I can promise you that if you go back and look at those, that none of them will be at 7.5314 between millage assessments at the end of the day
I
because
don't,
of the fact that they're
I wouldn't
already.
say that with LaBelle. They're talking about 6.25
I
plus
haven't looked at their budget,
$300
so
in
I'm not sure.
assessments.
But historically, it's been much lower, and so I would be surprised that they topped us at 7.53.
Well, they are looking at setting their rates at 6.25 for their
Plus
average
$300 assessment from what
$100
I
worth of
saw.
assessment.
You know what? We were elected to represent Clewiston.
I'm just saying, if we're going to compare apples to apples, then let's compare.
And we shouldn't always run to try to do what our neighbor does.
May I finish this? Because I actually started by saying that when we started this discussion, the intent was always to reduce the millage by whatever the assessment was going to be in terms of millage. And we didn't vote on it back in June or July or whenever we had it on the agenda because that was the intent. And that's why we didn't vote for it then and we waited to now. To go back and compare. Now, I know that I have been told, I guess it's in an MSBU, where if you have to reduce the millage, or I think that we had discussed it. I thought we were under a requirement to reduce the millage by whatever the assessment was.
We did. This one reduces the fire spending,
but not the
full
overall.
penage.
No, not the
overall
budget. We took out $356,000 from the fire budget, but we still increased or kept the millage the millage the same,
But
Randy.
it was nothing to do with the fire.
Well, I know, but we have record revenues from the state. We have a 10% increase on our assessed values. We have only a 5% budget increase. We've done a 4.4% COLA. So there's a lot of stuff, and we have a lot of things in this budget that's a very rich and robust budget because of the grant funding, because of the money that's come in. I'm just saying that it's nice to have that, but at the end of the day, is it a benefit to the community when you still have a 7.5314 overall taxes for each homeowner? So.
If we could talk about why we didn't vote on it in July, is for this very reason, for transparency. If you had voted on it then with an expectation of a 1% reduction, that wouldn't have been accurate, and because we didn't know what the budget. We said, and I said personally at that time, that will be a function of the budgeting process, and the commission puts all of it together on the table and determines what the final millage is. You could raise the millage and reduce the fire portion because you may have other needs. The county just raised theirs last night to 7.1, which is above the current rate for the demand and extra cost that they intend to fund in that budget. So the commission isn't obligated to lower it. You'd have to lower it for the fire portion, but you don't have to lower it overall because there, as you know, the $350,000 out of a $16 million budget is just one factor. It's not all of it. And personnel costs are significant. We want to give you some more data when you're asked to take further action on the impact of the $15 minimum wage. Cumulatively already is a substantial amount of funding that the city's already put in over the last two budgets. And with this approval of this year's budget, you'll be doing a third and going to have to do at least one or two more of those to meet that obligation of the $15 minimum wage. But it's a substantial amount of money, far exceeding this fire change and any other changes we have. Capital, we have tried to use the funding that's going to grants and those things separate from the operating budget. We haven't funded our operations with those grants. So when they go away, that's just going to minimize the amount of capital items that we'll be able to accomplish with the budget unless you add more money to it. But I don't disagree with the philosophy and the desire to lower it. I just don't believe it's prudent in the budgeting process if we want to avoid history of putting ourselves in a difficult position to maintain a respectable and healthy fund balance, unassigned fund balance going forward, and not get in some of the issues. And we further researched that because that is the action that did contribute to the reduction in the fund balance over those years. And we'll give you some more information on that based on the records. But I respect and appreciate all the comments to the contrary, but I just don't feel like it's you asked me to advise the commission, and I've given the best advice I can, and we have held the line on that millage rate despite rollback opportunities since for the last, I believe it's 6 years, and which preceded me. And the reason was to build back the fund balance to a respectable level, a healthy level that puts us in a better position. And I think we should do it one more time, and then each year is a separate evaluation. But
and I respected the fact that we were able to do an increase of unassigned fund balance. It's the amount that is there in addition to the additional contingency that we put back instead of putting, we already had the contingency, but we added the differences of some of the funding, which was an additional $200,000. We still have ARPA funds out there that we could put into this budget. And what happened over the last 5 or 6 years is that we did not come to vote for a fire assessment. That's the difference of keeping the millage rate at where it was at compared to what we're doing tonight.
And the only comment,
This budget,
as we
so.
discussed at the last meeting, that is just for transparency and so that all listening can hear it. If you do not do the assessment, or you didn't do it, or you told us back in July, not this year, we could have certainly left it out. We would have had to meet the requirements for the budget we put before you. We would have had to recommend an increase in the millage rate of an equivalent amount or something close to what that amount would have been, and then some. So, because it does have an impact on what we get, obviously, in state share revenues in years going forward based on it. I agree that the timing is unfortunate, but I don't know that you ever have a good timing for those kind of influences impacting each other, because
I honestly believe also in timing, and I think the timing is right to do the right thing by going back to the rollback rate, and because of in light of the fire assessment, and that each year every budget is different and we have to make decisions. And I appreciate that there was cuts and there was positions that weren't filled, but I do believe that the city could have found, or in this budget process, the rollback, which was only $156,000, Randy. That's my opinion. So only just to make us to understand to the community that we realize what everybody else is going through in this town. Everything's up, and we've got a good budget that's very robust, and that we could have trimmed a little bit more, up to the tune of $156,000, in light of the fact that we're adding basically $1 million for the fire assessment. And again, I'll state I am supporting the fire assessment because I do believe that that's what's for the future is what we should have, a standalone assessment for the fire department in light of the county funds the majority of that budget.
Any other comments?
Yeah. Is anybody dizzy yet from all this discussion? You understand any of it? Very little?
Say something.
So could I ask you this time to put your name on the microphone and your address?
My name is Charles Liano, and I live within the perimeters of Clewiston. I've seen my taxes go up from last year to this year 270% or higher. And if yesterday's meeting, all those proposed taxes increases, assessments that I saw increased by 20%, 28%, 60-something%. It's true what you're saying. As a homeowner here, I can't afford the taxes. And I'm not sure, the salary of everybody else on stage, but I know the salary of an average teacher is not that much. So when I hear you kind of just brush it off, it does hit certain notes because, I am feeling the effects of seeing my taxes increase 270% to a potential 290% from just last year. And that's what I wanted to say. Just keep that in mind, please, because I also support, fire, rescue. But at the same time, I am also hurting because I'm feeling it. And those taxes are not just doubling, they're almost tripling within a year. And then everyone's talking about more increases for next year or in 3 years. And it becomes a little bit just too ridiculous for someone to actually live here.
Just for clarity.
And I'm a teacher within right here, Clewiston. So you're pricing me out. I'm getting priced out, just something to think about.
Just for clarity, the percentage increase you're referring to, is that county and like
That
the
was some
school
of the
board?
county yesterday's meeting.
Yeah.
That was some of the county as well. My taxes with the proposed changes will also be now 290% higher than they were just last year. And this is what I'm getting printed out and handed to me and mailed to me. So these aren't just numbers I'm making up. I'm just
And
simply doing the math.
that's a city of Clewiston
No.
address or a Hendry County address?
I live right behind Walmart. I live right next to, the commissioner. I live
Wow.
I live right here. So
But
you know,
but that's not city, that's county and city.
it all adds up.
Your value.
That's what I'm just trying to say.
And the
It all
school,
adds
the
up.
hospital,
You got a
all of it
hospital and
So,
all.
whether you want to say it's for a new school, and I understand all this stuff, it all adds up, and then it all ends up on to have average salaries versus, like I said, I don't know what anybody else in the room, but I can tell you as a teacher that teaches the kids in this school, in this community, it's those are the not numbers that concern me. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finish. Transparency and fairness has been thrown around a lot. I'm sure you'll probably hear it in your dreams tonight. Transparency is knowing, is what Commissioner Gardner was speaking of, is this had an expectation of lowering ad valorem, your millage, by $350,000 something dollars. But instead, we feel that's transparency. That's what should be said up here. That's true transparency. And the tried and true method, like the chief said, is ad valorem. The tried and true method has been through ad valorem tax since inception of our state. It's not something new. It's not something our neighbors just started doing. It's something we have done and the whole state have done forever. I think the chief used going to the bank and truth and what was it? Lending. Well, we have truth and millage. That's your trim notice. That's what trim stands for. So you know exactly what you're being charged for, what you're paying. It's not going to change. There's no bait and switch. There's no smoke and mirrors. You know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly what you're paying for. That's the system we're using now. Okay? And the truth is, like fairness is subjective. What it boils down to, the haves will pay less and the have-nots will pay more. Is it the same across the board? Yeah. But that's the bottom line. The haves will pay more and the have-nots will pay less and have-nots will pay more what they're paying right now. So imagine somebody's making less than you that don't live behind Walmart. They're paying even more. That's one of my concerns.
Right, but when you're saying they're paying more, you're talking because $116 applies to every house, no matter of the actual value.
They'll
of
pay
the
more than what
house.
they are now.
Okay.
Yeah, but some of them aren't paying anything now.
The value of your house was less than your homestead, your value after homestead. Some people in this town pay zero ad valorem taxes. Now, those same people that paid zero will pay $116 because the assessment you can't get out of.
Same as your income tax.
So that's the truth in millage. Yes, taxes went up. Even if we didn't have this assessment, your taxes went up because your property value went up. But now that we're adding the assessment, it went up again. So that, yes, that is true.
So I'll ask the audience, is it transparent if we charge you an assessment and now we just filled that gap with ad valorem taxes? Majority of the public, I guarantee you don't know that because they look at the millage and it's the same until you get that assessment fee. And you also have a potential of the operations driving the budget, so the budget driving the operations as it should. That's my view. So if we want to talk about transparency, let's put it out there.
And then for transparency, our final budget hearing is on the 18th at 5 o'clock. Is that correct? 5:05. Yeah. That tonight's just a fire assessment, but I felt it was important for me to disclose where I'm at, especially since Thursday night, and that the final budget hearing is on the 18th at 5 o'clock right here at the City Hall.
Any more comments from the commission?
No, sir.
I think pretty much we need to approve this fire assessment.
Okay, I'll declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion on resolution 2023-077.
I'll motion to approve 2023-077.
Second.
Motion by Highslope, second by Edmonds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. And the next one is Resolution 2023-078. It approves an agreement between the City of Clewiston and the Henry County Property Appraiser to collect the non-ad valorem fire assessment.
Hopefully less debate on this one.
And I will read that by title. Resolution 2023-078, a resolution of the City of Clewiston approving the agreement for non-ad valorem assessment collection between the City of Clewiston and the Henry County Property Appraiser, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement. Any discussion? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Second by Edmonds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any further comments? As Commissioner Gardner said, we have our final budget hearing and a regular meeting on September 18th at 5:05. Anything else? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.